Hey everybody, as we prepare for our next YTT weekend together in a couple weekends from now, I wanted to reach out to you directly and address our homework assignment. So originally in your required reading list, I had asked you to purchase in anticipation to read this sections of this book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Now, the reason I chose this book was because nearly all of the trauma-sensitive yoga books that I looked at, all are referring back to this scientist, to Dr. Kolk, to his research and his team's research, and to this book in particular. And so I thought, well, let's go right to the source. The thing is, as I could have anticipated, that this book is very broad, and yoga is only a small part of it. But a large part of this book is talking about the last 30 years of brain imaging and being able to understand trauma more directly and more accurately based on brain patterns and brain formations. And, and this is research that, really took off with, the brain imaging machines, but Dr. Kolk is tracing it back to a book about emotions that Darwin wrote that is blowing my mind, and his original discovery of the vagus nerve, and which he called the pneumogastric nerve, obviously making the same connections, with the heart and the throat and communication and the tongue and so forth as the vagus nerve. Anyway. The broadness about this book, however, is that it's including all sorts of different potential trauma situations, several different approaches, but the running theme throughout the whole book is that it's in the tissues. That the traumas that we experience, or to actually more like the therapy for the trauma, for many people can only go so far in talk therapy. That the therapy happens when we engage the body. And this is what we've been talking about our whole training, right? Part of why we're practicing yoga. So the reason I'm making this video, however, is that I've decided not to give you a large chunk of reading from it because in my own experience reading this book, it's been twofold. One is that I'm completely blown away by the research. Watching the brain, looking at the brain imaging with what parts of the brain are triggered when people are telling their traumatic stories, and the progress that's made when one addresses the tissues, like in EMDR, the crossing of the brain, or through yogic practices and so forth. But what I did notice as I was reading the book, too, is that while I was blown away, there were parts of the book that were talking about the development of a child's mind, or the response after a traumatic situation, whether it was an unexpected loss, or it was an assault, or so forth, or, PTSD for military personnel. And I found myself, when reading about myself, essentially, is that I got a little triggered. And there were moments that I cried, and there was moments that I felt such profound compassion for myself and my situation, of my childhood, and how my psyche organically was drawn to the somatic practices, how I dropped out of my master's program in clinical psychology to pursue massage and yoga, because I knew somehow that it was through the tissues. But with that said, as exciting as that was, the book did trigger me. And while it has by far more enlightened me than anything, but I felt like as your teacher, I didn't want to put you in a position that you might read parts of this book and be triggered and not have someone there to support you, or maybe you haven't developed the skills yet to support yourself. So I wanted to open the options and at least give a caveat or to your assignment. So what I've given you to do is that I've given you a couple of, I've given you an article on trauma-sensitive yoga. I would really like you to listen to, there's a live link on your PDF, listen to a podcast via YouTube called On Being by Krista Tippett, and she's interviewing Dr. Bissell van de Kolk. Listen to this first before you decide to read any of the book, for those of you who want to step out into that broader understanding. This interview is so lovely and so inspiring and so compassionate, but gives you lots of really cool science. So for those of you who decide that you want to go on and read, of course you can read any chapters that you want, but if any of you want to read more for our purposes, I would encourage you to read chapter 5 on the body-brain connection, and chapter 6 about losing your body, losing yourself, and chapter 16, learning how to inhabit your body, specifically through the yoga practice. So, please reach out to me with any questions. I think that in future YTTs, I will use aspects from this book as for presentations, but I will probably get a more yoga-specific, trauma-sensitive book that gives practices. So super enjoy this broadcast. The link I gave you to On Being is through YouTube, and be prepared because it's like 55 minutes long, and YouTube wants to use that time as much as it can to advertise to you. So like somehow, like right in the middle of the interview, there'll be some sort of like yoga commercial, or there'll be like a 20-second constipation commercial. Like, it's just really obnoxious. But you can also find this at the On Being podcast through iTunes, but I couldn't send you that link. So if you want to download it, you can look up On Being, interviewing Bissell van de Kolk. All right. So again, please reach out to me with any questions, and I look forward to reading your reflections and talking to you more about this subject in our coming weeks. Bye.